Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. So as you would have already noticed, I have changed my hairstyle. I don't know why, but I have. So now coming back to PEGA, today video is gonna be a kind of theoretical and it might get a bit boring for you as well. I don't know, but it's kind of an important. So basically today we're gonna learn about how to create classes, not how to create classes, basically how to configure class rule when we create a new class. Like as a fresher who are new to PEGA, people who are like changing their domains or whatever, like they are new to PEGA, so they feel kind of this part a bit tricky. So for them this video is going to be, so if you're already experienced you might want to skip this video as well, or feel free to you can watch as well just to increase my number of watch hours. So let's jump onto the video. So I'll share my screen, let's get started. So now coming to the class rule, right? How, when we create a class, how do we configure it? So we all know how to create a class, right? Like if you can go to create and under sysadmin, we have the option of class, right? Similarly, if you want to create some under already existing class, suppose like over here, if you see, I already have a work class, right? So inside that, if I need to create a class, what I can do is I can go click on create, and under sysadmin, I will find class, right? And it will create the class. Now the problem is not creating the class, the problem is how to configure it, right? What should be the different option I should select while creating the class. So right now if, you can open the class rule from here as well, or by right clicking on the name and click on definition, right? It will open the same thing. So this is how you open the class rule. Now coming to back to the configuration. So if you see, when I click on this definition, by default this was selected as concrete, right? This is a work class. This got created automatically when I created this case type utility, and I have different classes as well. And while the work class is created by PEGA itself when we create the application for the first time, right? So now if you see this, coming back to this class rule, if you see this is a class type is of concrete, right? So here we have two options basically. One is abstract and one is concrete. So now what is the difference between them, right? Why are these two options are there, and how are they different, and how do we know what to select when? So basically the basic difference between them is that when a class type is of concrete, we can have instances of it. What are instances? Basically you can consider the instances as an object of that class, right? So if I will click on this class rule again, if you see, I have so many instances present inside this class, right? These are the object of this class. So basically when we want to persist the data, right? So we select the class type as concrete. Now how do we know when do I need to persist the data or not, right? So basically I will give you a scenario. We know that in PEGA we have different class structures, right? Basically class levels: work class, data class, and integration class, right? So work class basically we use when we want to create some case types or cases, right? So we want to persist those cases because we want to store the data so that later on when we come on and we can go through the data. Like suppose if I want to check what was the case, what happened in this case, so I can open it and go through all the information about the case, right? So I want these cases to be persisted, but this might not be a scenario in some different scenarios, right? This might not be the case in different scenarios, right? So like when we create an integration class, let's just assume, right? So if suppose I will click over here and I will go to integration class. So if you would be knowing, right, when do we create integration classes? So basically when we want to map certain data, right? When we create connectors or services, we want to have integration class. So suppose, take an example, when you are creating a connector, you created an integration class, right? So what happened in that situation is that you are not going to, the data is already stored in somewhere, right? And you are going to just take the data, you are just going to receive the data, right? You are going data and just show them or use for your whatever purpose, like if you want to show in the UI or manipulation, whatever. But you don't want to save the data in your system, right? In your table basically, right? So you don't need the data table. So we don't select the class as abstract, concrete. We select the class as abstract because we just need to manipulate the data or show in the UI or whatever purpose you want to use it. But we don't want any table specifically for that class. But in this scenario, in the work scenario, we want the data to be persisted, and since it has to be persisted, we need to save it somewhere, right? So we want to have a class for it. So that's what concrete and abstract is all about. Now coming to data class, basically the data class is the one where we configure it as abstract or concrete. Now how do we know that? Like in this scenario, I will show you. I will go to my work class back again, okay? And I will show you. Suppose if you see over here under personal and data model, right? I have some few properties. Now if you see, this property is a page list of type of page list. So if I'll open this property defines is a definition of this class. If I'll open this class, you will see this class I have made an abstract. This is a data class, right? And I have made it as abstract. Why I have created abstract? Because I didn't wanted the data to be persisted over here, right? Because this is just a page list which is referring to this class and which I am going to use for data manipulation purpose or just show in the UI. But I don't want the data to be persisted in the data table explicitly, right? So I created this as abstract. But whereas in the scenario of work class, I wanted my case types to be persisted in the data table. So I created as concrete, right? Or PEGA default created as concrete. So whenever you create a case type, PEGA defaults is as concrete. Now coming to the other scenarios, created in version, it is kind of self-explanatory, so I'm not going to explain this. Now coming to the class, this class. So over here, if you see, we have three options: is a class group, does not belong to a class group, and belongs to a class group. Now what does class group means? As the name itself suggests, it's a kind of a group of classes, right? Now what does a group of class means? So if you see over here, by default it was selected belongs to a class group and the class group name was given as work class. So I'm just going to open this. If you see, this is a class group rule. Where we will find the class group rule, we will go and create again sysadmin, and you will see below class is a rule called class group. Now what this rule does is that when do we select class group is like, suppose since it is a collection of class, right, a group of classes, so whenever you select this option, PEGA is going to create explicit table for that class. So if you see right now, we belongs to this class group which is work class, right? So which is this one. So if I'll open this class, I'll open the definition of this, right? And if I'll go to test connectivity, you will see there is a table for this one, right? See, demo app underscore work, right? Now similarly, if I'll open the one for the utility, right, I will do the test connection, you will see again the table name is same. It is not like work dash underscore something like underscore utility, because you can say, right, it is a utility class, but you will see the class table name is work till work only, right? The same table is being used. So what happens is, like, when you select something as a class group, a table is created for that, and all the other classes which are selected as a belongs to a class group for that class are going to be stored in the same data table. So over here, if you see, like all these case type, personal, random, utility, they all are going to be, all the case types of these instances of these are going to be stored under the table of this work class, because this is a class group. So suppose I have a scenario where I know that my case types is going to be too much, or there are going to be a huge number of case types created, and I want a different table for that. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to go and make that class as when I will create the class, then what I'm going to do, I'm going to configure the class as is a class group. Suppose this is a rule, right? So if I want for this class, if I want my rule to be I want a table to be explicitly created, I'm going to select this as is a class group. And when I select this as a class group, I need to create an instance of class group rule, right? So I'm going to create a class group rule, I'm going to name that, and we are done. So guys, coming to the next option, which is keys, right? So if you see over here, there is an option called keys. Now when do we use it, right? So if you see in my this rule, which is work utilities, which is under the work class, right, I haven't mentioned any keys. But similarly, if you see in the work wala, this is the one which is created when we create our case type, right? Sorry, when we create our application, you see we have defined PYID. So basically this key is if you are familiar with the database concept, so whenever we have a table, right, we have to give something as primary key, right? Some row, basically some column which acts as a unique identifier, right? So this is what key is. So basically it is going to act as a unique ID to the table. So since we know that in this scenario, since this class is a work group, right, if you see, it is a work group, so it is, as I have already said, that it is going to have its own table, right? Since it is going to have its own table, so it should have a primary key, right? So PYID is going to be the key. We can have like combination of different properties as key as well, or a single one. Like over here we have only single. If you want, you can have multiple column together to act as a primary key. And if you don't want to give any property, you can select this checkbox, which is automatically generate a unique ID for the records of this type. Now coming to the utility class, since it belongs to a class group, so it is not going to have its own table, right? So we are not gonna mention any key because since it doesn't have a table, so it doesn't require a key. So we are good over here. We might if we leave it empty, we are good to go. Now coming below, if you see class inheritance. Now inheritance is again going to be an important part. So in Java, you would be knowing inheritance, right? So what inheritance means is that when in Java, basically when a class inherits other class, it inherits all the properties and methods of the other class, right? Whichever class it is inheriting to, right? We write this class, suppose car class extends vehicles, right? Something like that. So in PEGA we have two type of inheritance. One is pattern, another is directed. Now how they are different, right? What does that mean? First we'll go to directed. So if you see under directed, we have given a class name, right? So what PEGA going to do is that after this class, right, after this work utility class, PEGA is going to find when we inherit from this class, right, work class, PEGA is going to reuse the rule, or we can, since in the way same it is in Java, we're gonna inherit the rules or the methods, whatever we have defined in this class, we can use the same inside the utility one, right? Similarly, in the pattern inheritance, what happens, like after utility class, PEGA is going to search under work class the rules, right? It is going to inherit from the work class as well, then demo app level, then this OG, this is which is my organization level, from that level as well, right? So PEGA is going to inherit the rules from starting from the organization level and coming up the level each, right? So if you right click over here under the class name, and if you see inheritance, right, it will open up a window. Over here you can see like how the classes are defined, how the inheritance is defined. So in this scenario, this utility class has the inheritance type of both, which is both like directed and pattern. Then coming to the work level, it is pattern inherited, it is not directed. Now coming to demo app level, right, it is pattern. Then coming to organization level, it is directed. Then it is going to work cover, right, and work cover is again both, right? And this again finally it goes up to base class. And since it is the last level, so we do not have any inheritance type over here. So this is what inheritance is all about. Now since we have selected both, right, so the question arises, which ones runs first, right? How does PEGA identify like which one PEGA uses first? So you can see, right, find my name, the word first is written, right? So it is self-explanatory that pattern inheritance is taken over, like given more priority than directed one when the checkbox is selected. If it not, then only directed inheritance is going to work. Mostly when since I am in my local host and I am not having any framework, so by default it is as of work class, but we use directed inheritance mostly when we are having some framework level, right? Our own framework, we have created some framework, or we are using CRM or sales automation stuff, right? So then we give a direct inheritance to reuse the rules of those frameworks. So that's all about the class over here. So guys, this was all about configuring the class rule. There are other aspects as well, which we gonna cover in different video. Maybe I will try creating some class rule and show you how to configure different things. Maybe external mapping and all those stuff are also there, that we gonna cover in the next video.